Hello everyone, this is Kristina Mand-Lakhiani, and welcome to my next installment of Honest Conversations. So I am in California right now, in LA, and it's 3 p.m. here, so I'm a little disoriented in terms of time. Hey Sarah!
Hi Kristina, how are you?
I'm good. For those who are joining, I do not know if you're coming from Sarah's side or from my side. I have this habit of honest conversations where I have little interviews with people that I like, the people who are in my industry. So they're teachers usually and authors, but also I pick them more by the feel. So I would like to chat with a person, and that's how I pick. I'm not going by any other statistics. So yeah, we just met with Sarah here at one of the of Mindbell events actually. But I know Sarah for a little longer actually. You were speaking at A-Fest, I would say 1.5 years ago, right?
Yes, in Bali. That's right.
Yes,
yeah.
in Bali. And Sarah is friends with the universe. This is for the benefit of my own audience. So she teaches abundance because she has this direct line to the universe. She's like, hey, universe, I need this. But for those who are not from my side, who are from your side, and who know that you are friends with the universe, I have to warn you guys, my honest conversations are unpredictable because I do not know what's going to come to my head and what I'm going to ask. The point is that they're casual. So thanks, Sarah, for calling in. Where are you now? Probably not too far, right?
No, I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh.
So I'm in my office, in my home in Las Vegas. So you're going to have to come and visit sometime, Kristina.
We should. You're not staying
Yes.
too long here.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, you know, I'll go straight into that. So universe as bestie and abundance is all good. But we were just meeting with a bunch of women and having a conversation. And I realized that, you know, while we know our values, while we know our goals, sometimes for whatever reason, we women particularly tend to do that. We choose to be wise, to be enlightened, and to accommodate to our environment. So I know you've had a very interesting story in your own life where you were doing that, and then you had to just stand for your truth and for your values. So I wanted to actually talk about that.
Sure.
Is it okay to share that?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So for those of you that don't know my story, I was married for 10 years in a very toxic relationship. And when I was brave enough to leave, I left with nothing. I had 2 suitcases, 2 children, and over $30,000 worth of debt. So I started to get curious about how I could create sustainability financially for myself. And one of the ways that I did that was getting curious about some of the emotions that were coming up, the fear, the scarcity, the depression. And I learned how to guide my energy and my emotions based on how I was feeling. And I was seeing that the universe was responding to that. So that was really a clue for me and a turning point into what got me to where I am today, which is financial and abundant sustainability.
Sarah, you said it very briefly right now that you had the courage, but how did you know that, you know, it's time to stop accommodating and stop being the better one, the bigger one, and actually standing the truth?
It was taking responsibility for my own happiness. And that's ultimately what shifted the dynamics, especially in my marriage and any relationship that I've ever had. If I'm placing expectations on the other person, then that's not fair. So the best way to empower myself is to go, okay, what brings me happiness, and do more of that. And I realized that what's crazy is that all of the media attention and what I've written about in my book is that people think that I left my first marriage because of the toxic dynamic and the violence, but it actually wasn't. It was more about me seeking happiness on my own terms. And that was really that turning point. And I believe anybody can do that if they go, okay, how can I show myself more compassion, more softness, more forgiveness, and nurture myself in the way that I'm looking externally to be nurtured?
But did you have doubts? Because like, for example, like I've been through big life changes in my life, and I tell myself logically, I say, I'm doing that because I need to take care of my happiness. But also there is conditioning from the past where I'm thinking, but, you know, maybe I should just suck it up. Maybe I should be wiser. Maybe I should learn something from that. And, you know, did you have doubts, and how did you do that?
Oh, absolutely. I tried to leave 8 times. So it was like, I'd get to that point where I'd feel like I was brave enough, but then the doubts would creep in and I'd be like, oh, I'm not ready, or I'm not good enough, or I'm afraid. And you know when you're ready. And then all of a sudden the universe tends to support you with those doors. They appear out of nowhere. And it's like you'll get a phone call or an opportunity, or you'll meet somebody out of the blue that will facilitate that grounding and that connection that you need in order to take those next steps. So it really is about trusting that the universe is showing and guiding the way, because we get signs, we get feelings, sometimes we get dreams. But at the same time, you can still have that doubt. And that doesn't go away. It's when you learn how to manage that doubt effectively that it actually minimizes its impact. So it's practice. It's like building a muscle. You go to the gym and you lift weights and then it works for you. It's the same with your emotions. The more you can acknowledge what they are there to help you to grow and expand and learn from, the more you'll see your life will change.
I'll ask you a question that a lot of people ask me. So you said that you knew that you had to do that because you had to take care about your own happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And now, years later, you probably know that this was the defining point for you, that it was an important step. But when we are facing that situation, like I'm not happy, I know that when we separated with Vision, a lot of people were telling me like, oh, you're being selfish. Mm-hmm. So how do you draw the line between, you know, I have to take care of my happiness versus me being selfish? Because we all romanticize sacrifice to some degree, especially sacrifice to the greater good.
Absolutely. So when I left, because it was on a quest of seeking my own happiness, I ended up in even more of an unstable, unhappy situation because I didn't know how I was going to feed my children. And so the universe took me to a different level of, okay, if you're really going to walk this talk, I'm going to train you. So I believe that the universe trains us. It doesn't test us. It trains us to get stronger. So even though I had the doubts, and even though I felt selfish at certain points because my children were struggling, I still knew that there was a greater purpose. There's a knowing. You just know in your heart and in your gut when you're on that right path, especially when you realize that there really isn't any wrong path. There's just a path.
Yeah. But how are you sure that you know it? And that's because I know a lot of, like, for example, nutrition teachers will tell you, like, don't listen to your, to your feel, because your emotions will play tricks on you and you will think that that's what you need. But in reality, it's not true. How do you know with this kind of situation that, this is the right thing? And I'm not just being, just thinking just about myself.
I think you just have to pick a lane and go with it. You have to make a decision, and with the awareness that you can change your mind as well, that it's okay to say no, it's okay to accept if you've made a mistake. And so often the ego is involved with that, saying, no, I don't want to appear to understand that I was in the wrong, but sometimes you are.
You know what I like about your approach is that because that's my problem. I overthink things, and then even if I make a decision, I start like doubting, because, what I love about your approach is that you just know, and you just pick it. You pick the line of thought and you just go along this way. So I think the simplicity of this decision making is really genius.
Oh, it takes practice. Well, thank you. It does take practice. You have to know that, if you make a bad choice, it's not the worst thing that can happen. So often we live in fear that we're going to make that wrong choice, but just making a choice builds that energetic momentum towards the next level or stage or chapter of your life. And it's exciting.
So are you happy now?
Yes. But you know what? Here's the reality. Sometimes I'm not. It's not something you can measure consistently all the time. I mean, we're human beings. Of course, I have sad days, bad days, depressed days. But I take personal responsibility for how that's showing up. And I think the key distinction is we have an amount of happiness that we have in our lives in direct proportion to the amount of blame that we dish out for other people. So when you're blaming, you're shaming, you're wishing things that would be different, that you have control to navigate and guide, then you're just handing your power over. So you can take it back by going, okay, how was I responsible in this situation? What did I bring to the table to make this happen? And then you can work your way through it. It's a fun adventure.
I'll talk about your bestie in a while, but another question is bubbling up in my head. So one thing is, you know, standing up for your own happiness. The other thing is if you are truly attached to the person. My feeling is, and it's just my feeling, that often we don't stand up for ourselves, not because we don't know what's good for us or we don't value our happiness, or, you know, it's not about self-love. It's about that we love another person. We love, or we attach to another person, we care about another person truly, and we keep hoping, you know, we keep hoping that maybe I should put more effort. Did you have this situation? Because I don't know in detail what about you walking out of the first marriage, but how do you deal with that attachment and with that love and with that desire to not give up?
It took me a long time to understand that I did the best that I could with what I had. And I was in my 20s. I wasn't very mature. My ex-husband was a lot older than I am. And he hurt me physically, mentally, spiritually, all of those ways. And I was also part of that dynamic. And I blamed myself for having the desire to want more for my life. And at the same time, I still loved him. There was that feeling of, I've created two human beings with you. I need to stick this out in order to make them happy and you happy and the external appearance of our parents and make everybody happy but myself. And I realized that you either grow together or you grow apart. And the thought of growing together just didn't feel like an option. I would still be in Melbourne, Australia right now, folding 6 baskets of laundry a day and not being an entrepreneur. And that just wasn't who I was. I had to be true to myself. And I was always fighting against that. So I think that bravery, doing that self-audit of, okay, what do you want? How's this going to serve you? And also, what's this showing my children? Because if I was just sucking it up and being a people pleaser and staying to make everybody else happy other than myself, what's that teaching my children? I wouldn't want my daughters, or my son for that matter, to be stuck in that kind of situation. So yeah, it's big issues, but life always moves you through. We get there in the end.
Can you tell me, where did you learn your wisdom in life? Because I understand that you were literally face flat on the floor at some point in your life, and you walked out of it and you started building it back up. How did that journey go for you?
Oh, I was always a very curious little girl. I loved metaphysics and the universe and the psychic, mystical side of life, because my mother is a tarot card reader and my father's a watercolorist. He's an artist. So I grew up in that woo-woo environment. And so I always knew there was more than we could see. And so I learned how to believe beyond what I could see. And it was when my life started taking the detours into emotional hardship and very difficult relationship dynamics that I was like, okay, I'm ready to learn. And it wasn't until many years later that I could see that the pain becomes a portal for transformation, no matter what you're going through. And I think that just being curious, I mean, I've been studying for, I guess, 25 years now, meditation, manifesting, self-help, all of that. I'm just a personal development junkie. I mean, that's why I love Mind Valley as well, because of all of the beautiful people and people that are drawn to that. And there are so many of us, especially in the Mind Valley tribe, that have gone through that hardship. And that's because we can put this, this work not just into figurative practice, but actually feet on the ground. Let's get this work done. It's actually, it's so fun. It doesn't sound like it, but pain can be fun sometimes when you can see that there is definitely light at the end of that tunnel.
So share how did you meet your bestie, the universe?
Oh, so many different ways. But one way in particular was when I'd been married for about 8 years. It was New Year's Eve. And my first husband, he just went to bed in a bad mood because I picked the wrong movie. And I went out into the backyard and I just pleaded with the universe, please don't let me have another year of feeling isolated and alone ever again. I just had enough. And I think that when it gets painful enough, the change starts to happen. Whether you like it or not, the universe will make those decisions, step in and go, okay, here's a different path. So I remember looking up and just pleading and saying, dear universe, take this pain away. I never want to experience this level of loneliness again. And that was the last year that I ever went through that. So I think it is that connection to a higher power that helps us move through the more difficult times in our lives.
Mm. But do you think we get to that enlightenment through pain normally, or like is pain necessary for growth, or do you think it's optional? And it's a trick question, by the way.
It is. I think suffering's optional. I think suffering is definitely optional, but pain is unavoidable. We're human beings. And I don't think that it is enlightenment by any I can't say that anybody that I know is an enlightened being, because that defeats the purpose of being here. I believe that we chose to be here to learn and to grow and to experience the messiness and the beautiful, delicious messiness of life. And the more we show up with a willingness to face it head on with a sense of curiosity and compassion, the more it's a lot more of a delicious experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool. So tell me, what's the most, what's the, I don't know, what do you do? I wouldn't call it a ritual because I don't know what it is. Maybe it's not a ritual at all.
Sure.
But what do you do to keep in touch with your bestie?
Present moments, joy, finding the divine humor in sometimes less than desirable situations.
Divine humor?
Divine humor. I think that the universe has a wicked sense of humor. When just things go wrong, there's nothing more that you can do than put your hands up and laugh, because you will always lose the battle if you argue with reality. Always. The moment you start arguing with reality, wishing things that would be different, then you just lose.
I really love this phrase, because I want you to still answer the question, but I just want to stop here to say you will always lose the battle if you argue with the reality. I think it's something which is so profound, and yet we keep arguing with reality. So I just wanted to pause here. Continue.
Definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So the way that I connect to the universe is by being as present as possible, and just as cheesy as it sounds and woo-woo, is going with the flow, or just accepting what is. And that has really been the key point to where the universe can flow through you, that life isn't happening to you, it's flowing through you and for you. And there's a key distinction there, and you can usually realize it when something bad happens and you don't allow it to change who you are. So, for instance, when I've suffered 6 miscarriages in my life. We're getting real here, Kristina. I went through 6 miscarriages, 5 in a row. I had recurrent miscarriages, and I didn't allow that to define who I was. It was an experience that was happening to me and ultimately for me, so that I could be stronger. And this is the name of the game, getting comfortable with uncertainty. And this is why these experiences keep coming up time and time again, to go, okay, there's another layer of getting comfortable with that uncertainty. And it's really a magical adventure when you can see that the universe is giving you all of these opportunities to get comfortable with the uncertainty and to not be afraid by it.
So, Sarah, you've been mentioning a lot of very deep comments, but in passing in a way as if it's a simple thing, So getting comfortable with uncertainty, not letting the painful experience define who you are, because I've experienced a miscarriage before I got pregnant for the second time, because I've always wanted to have a lot of kids. I only managed to get 2, and the second one was a long journey, because first I couldn't even get pregnant, and then when I got finally pregnant, I miscarried, and I know it can be a very hard experience for a woman, especially that the secondary infertility is something we don't talk about. We only pity the woman who can't have any children, but we don't talk about women who want to have more and they can't. So how do you deal with these hard situations and you don't allow the moment to crush you? Is there anything you can share?
Yeah, I think the more you go through those kind of painful experiences, the more you develop a thick skin and resilience and wisdom, because you know that life keeps on moving you forward. I mean, the harsh reality is that every single human being will suffer either loss or have to go through a period of grief in their life because they lose a loved one. And so we try to push that to the side and not think about it too much because it seems depressing or overly gloomy. But we have a responsibility to see that the most beautiful moments can sometimes be sparked in our deepest pain, that it takes a lot to get somebody to rock bottom. But when you're there, the only place is up, as cheesy as all hell as that sounds, but it's true. Like when you're down and the universe whispers to you in those moments. And so often we only turn to that higher power in our moments of need. You know, if your loved one's in the hospital, you might go and pray or meditate or, you know, set an intention. But we don't, I mean, probably not the community that's watching us right now, but a majority of people don't take time to do that just in their ordinary everyday life, to be grateful for the good times. But a friend of mine said it's very easy to be grateful at a feast, which is so true, because the moment all that food's gone or there's nothing to feel grateful for, it's like, well, why would I be grateful? But that's where you create that turning point that unlocks that next layer of awareness. We're like onions. I tell people this all the time. We're like giant onions walking around and just peel off a layer and another layer. It's almost like we have infinite layers of awareness. And it's a beautiful opportunity to remember that no one's got it all figured out. We get in our heads. And that nobody, if anybody says they've got it all figured out, they've got to be lying.
I agree. But
Yeah.
share, you know, because there are so many things you touched upon which I want to ask. So the thing number one is that, and I'll be a little bit maybe contradictory. Gravity works one way. So when you're flat down, and I believe that you are a very unique person, because you seem to have resilience and the optimist so deeply ingrained in every single cell of yours that you don't see the opportunity other than going back up, you know, other than bouncing back. But it is not true for everyone. There are so many people who get crushed, because if that was the case, if what didn't kill us made us stronger, we'd be surrounded by super strong people.
I love that. And thank you for that reminder, because this is what I teach, that especially in the personal development industry, that being negative or having those down days is wrong, that you've messed up the process somehow. But what I teach is to allow yourself to have that grief. Allow yourself to be depressed, to be sad, to not try and sweep everything under the rug, because it's not processing your emotions effectively. The way that I have become more resilient and maybe give that optimistic vibe of, hey, everything's going to be okay, even though that sounds really patronizing. It's not intended to be that, but it will be okay. As long as you're able to take your next breath or blink your eyelids, it's so important to remember that life will move you forward. And that if you're having a down day, if you're feeling negative, just don't spill it over onto everybody else. I think that it's so important to have girlfriends or boyfriends or friends in general, to have that support, to have that beautiful dumping ground so you just empty out. It's so important. But what's not okay is when you live as if you're leading with your limiting beliefs. And you make universal statements such as, I am not a lucky person, or everything never works out for me, or why has the universe forgotten me? And it's just an opportunity again. No one's got it all figured out. I mean, last week I was probably on the floor crying because my whole life felt like it fell to shit just over the smallest thing. And it doesn't have to be that way. Then you pick yourself up again and you try again.
I want to ask you the question which I read from Brené Brown's book, Rising Strong. She was talking about how our society is so hung up on the bounce back. And we skim over the flat down on the floor. So what do you have any tips or suggestions? What do you do when you are face down on the floor, and you're not sure if you have it, if universe has forgotten you, why?
Yeah.
So do you have anything to share? Because we are not taught how to deal with that.
No. Allow yourself to be on the floor for as long as you need to. There's no rush. No one's got a timer. They're not saying, hey, pick yourself up. You're less of a person, or you're not as spiritual if you don't get up off this floor. allow yourself that floor time to process your emotions. It's not, yeah, just stay there until you can feel the tiniest thread of hope, or even in an intrinsic drive, like, oh, I'd really like a cup of tea right now. I know it sounds so simplistic, but it's true. Like, I've been on the floor before and I'm like, oh yeah, I'd like a chamomile tea or a peppermint tea, and I'll go and do that. And then I'll sit there and I'll enjoy my tea. Even if I don't consciously enjoy it, it's still facilitating a need. And then I can move on to the next thing and the next thing. And then someone will call, or then I'll interrupt my pattern and need to go to the supermarket, and just getting outside into the sunshine can make you feel better. It's the smallest things that can make the biggest differences. We don't have to overthink it.
I really love your approach and the simplicity of it, because like, allow yourself the floor time to be totally turned into the quote. So I know we were talking about, because your Instagram, and I've heard you speak, you speak about abundance, and I believe that it's mostly the financial abundance you're talking about.
It is, but it's also abundance defined on your own terms. So whatever that means to you. So
if we're talking about abundance, have you figured that thing out?
I have. I really have. And I think it's a much more complex conversation than we have time for now. But it really is about detaching from expectations and not thinking things through too much, and just taking inspired action. So we have these 5-year plans or 5-year goals and things like that, but being present every step of the way is the most important. I've got this thing that I speak on when I speak on stage. I use this as an example that in the personal development industry, you may have heard this yourself, that it's not about the journey, it's the destination. Or no, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Sorry, you got it around the wrong way. Like, total flip around there. But it's about both. It's about the journey and the destination. That when you get there, more than likely that goalpost changes. So this is why it's so important to focus on the destination and the journey, every step being present, and look ahead in the future as a goal that you're heading in that direction of, but not limiting yourself to that either, because we need to be open to all possibilities to unlock the magic of abundance. This is just the lay of the land. And by that, I mean, some people have very limiting beliefs around how they believe they can attract abundance. So it has to be through one stream of revenue, or one talent that they have, or a business idea that must be facilitated. But more often than not, when you're on this path, you have to be the jack of all trades or the Jill of all trades, and take on board so many different roles in order to create that vision. But it's that willingness to do all of those things that is the difference between attracting abundance or staying in a scarcity mindset. Like I said, it's a much bigger conversation, but that's the overview.
So you teach about the mindset of abundance. You don't go into the practicalities of, how to become rich.
Oh God, no. No way. I couldn't do that, because I'm still learning myself. I will be the first person to spend too much money on something without thinking about it. But yet at the same time, I have a great partnership with my husband, and we discuss things. If we want them and need them, we have like a threshold before we can spend that money, which has expanded over the years. Used to be $200. If we were going to spend anything over $200, we'd have to talk to each other. And now it's about, I don't even know how much it is now, but it's a process, because the consciousness around abundance is always expanding. And the more you can facilitate the expansion within yourself in terms of consciousness, the more you'll see opportunities to grow and expand those levels of abundance. So as an example, and I will keep it to financial, many years ago, I wrote down that I wanted to earn $100,000 a year, because my husband at the time, he earned that amount of money, and that's like the top 10% of income earners in Australia. And so I never thought that it would be possible to exceed that amount. I just couldn't fathom it. And today I earn more than that. I won't go into details, but it's, again, the universe is always ready and willing to surprise you and exceed your expectations, but you have to be clear on your intentions.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said, because I suddenly realized that sometimes an act actually helps you make the shift. Because as I was sharing, so we had an event, for those who don't know, we had an event on Saturday, Sunday here in LA, where I was speaking, and I was sharing my experience of applying for university in UK,
Yes.
which coming from Soviet Union was something like flying to the moon. So it's interesting how just the doing something unthinkable, because for me it was unthinkable. I didn't know how. It doesn't happen to people like me, but just doing it actually opened up a door to a completely new world of possibilities, and something which was impossible suddenly became possible. So it's an interesting thought. I have to digest, because abundance is not my area, but that's what I want to ask. And that's going to be tricky again. So you see, we started with emotions and with happiness and with pain and all of that, which is in a way subjective. In a way subjective, because like when I feel this weird feeling in my stomach when I go on stage, I could call it excitement, or I could call it fear. I could call it something I want, or I could call it pain. And it's up to me how I call it, right? So when you teach people about like emotional resilience or agility or something like that, or happiness, they can just tell themselves, yeah, but I'm happy, I'm happy. With abundance, it's very straightforward. It's with numbers. So this is the only area where I see people genuinely saying, I've been dedicating so much time to that, and my numbers are still not speaking for me. Because everywhere else we can cheat ourselves. We can just tell ourselves like, no, I'm happy, I'm happy. I'm actually not, but I'm happy. So how do you manage that hard bit about your work?
Oh, well, I'd like to put a word in front of abundance, and that's conscious abundance. So it's around the willingness to show up and be a student, and to examine your blind spots, some of the areas in your life that you may not have looked at. And we've all got them. And like I said, we're those onions peeling back those layers. And what I have seen, and I've been working in the field of manifestation now for 10 years, is that people will only understand something when they're ready, when their life has brought them to a certain point. And some people might call that grace, or I don't know, intuition. You can only, an idea can really land in your heart when you are ready, and not a moment before. It's that concept of divine timing. And so, yes, abundance is very factual, not how I teach it. I'm sure there's many people out there that can tell you how to save all of your eggs in multiple baskets to live a life of abundance. But that person's not me. But what I can tell you is that money is energy. Money, this is my perspective anyway, that the energy that you put out there will always come back to you. So if you are operating from a scarcity mindset, meaning that you are judging other people if they've got more money than you, or you don't feel like there's enough money, or you came from a background or a history of poverty, it's a lot more difficult. And I did this myself. You have to make that journey to the destination of an abundance mindset, where you believe things like money does grow on trees, and there's enough money for everyone, and I will never be without money. And you maybe use the power of affirmations, but it is a choice point. You can either choose scarcity, or you can choose abundance. You can choose fear, or you can choose love. I think that every single moment that we're presented with can drop down into those buckets of how do I categorize this right now? So let's just say, for instance, that you found out that a course was going to be a lot more money than you thought it would be. And you're like, oh, no way I'm going to do that. No way in the world. That's your scarcity mindset. And that's the clue. Hey, maybe I should push past that to test my limits a little bit more. So I hope that answers the question.
It answers to some degree, but I still have, you know, I'm going to ask questions I wouldn't normally ask.
Yes.
But I'm sure you would have come across people who go to courses learning how to become rich, how to become abundant. And then they give you all this shit like, oh, yeah, what's on your bank account? Nah, that's not much there, but I live an abundant life because, you know, whatever I want, I have. Is that truly abundant life, or is that still lying to yourself?
I think there's milestones.
Okay.
And for me, so when I first started this journey, I set the intention that if I could go to the grocery store and buy the groceries that I needed versus the ones that were just necessary, and not think about how much it would cost, how much was in my little basket, then I had reached abundance. And so I'm at that point now. That's like the marker. And for so many people, I remember one day I had 40 cents to feed my children for 2 days. So in Australia, it's 20-cent coins. So I had 2 of those. And I was thinking, how am I going to do this? And then I found this no-name packet of pasta. And so I purchased that. And that's like the milestone for me was I could get through that day. That was really the key distinction. And that's the more basic level. If I can get through today where I know that I've been fed and I've had some water and I've got a place to put my head, then it's a good day filled with abundance. Or if it is, you go to the supermarket and you can afford things. And then there's people that have, and you probably experienced this too, Kristina, with the people that you have associated with over the years, people that have extreme wealth. And they can do anything that they want to, put rocket ships on the moon, using that as an example again.
Yeah.
And that to me, it's not unfathomable because I know what's possible. And I think as human beings, we need to remember, keep trying, keep getting to that next milestone, that next level of whatever you believe and perceive to be abundance, and celebrate each milestone.
I really like your approach. It's a little different from a lot of things that I've heard, in the sense that you don't overcomplicate things, and and it has like this intrinsic faith in your bestie, the universe.
I hope so.
So yeah, thanks for that. But it's also, I also like the fact that you keep telling, you still have to pushing yourself. You still have to do things to make you feel uncomfortable, because there are, I see two aspects to that. One aspect is the frame of mind that you are in. Are you thinking and looking at the world from the frame of mind of abundance or scarcity? But then on the other hand, that is good, that is a necessary requisite, but then there is also action. So what would be the balance between the your mind framework and your actions? Like, I guess you can do both, but still, where's the biggest weight in your success when it comes to financial abundance?
Consistent action, consistent inspired action. So my team probably won't like me for saying this, but I only write content or record podcasts when I feel like it. That's been one of the biggest issues, and I'm still learning how to navigate that level of consistency. But I have worked so hard over the last 10 years. There really is no such thing as overnight success. You do need to be willing to roll your sleeves up and do the hard work, because the universe is training you for what you asked for. And so, for landing book deals or speaking gigs or anything like that, I might have wanted those things 10 years ago, but there is no way in the world that I would have been ready. So we have to trust our journey and not compare our first day to somebody else's, 10,000th day. There's been a lot of energy, blood, sweat, and tears that goes into preparing that. And so that's really been the basis of my success. And the ability to not take myself too seriously as well. I'm not a, and I can't even say that without laughing because it sounds so silly, but to be willing to be vulnerable and authentic has really been that secret sauce that people are drawn to, because they realize, hey, this lady's just like me. She goes through exactly the same stuff. And I don't believe in a pedestal and putting people up on hey, that's a celebrity or that's a famous person. We're just all normal people trying to figure this shit out. So, yeah.
I really like this idea, what you said, that, you have to trust the universe, but you also have to trust that the universe will give you the opportunity when you're ready for that.
Yes.
And that still brings me back to the idea that mind is still primary, because I had this experience on stage this last weekend, and I've spoken on Mind Valley stages. I've spoken after celebrities, after world-class speakers who have been on stages for 10, 20, 50, 30 years. So it wasn't a new experience, but it was my decision at some point that I'm not going to consider myself secondary or lesser. I'll just acknowledge that I'm different, and maybe it's new to the world.
Yes.
Maybe it's unusual, but it is needed. And the moment when I acknowledge that, I feel the power and things start changing. So I still, I'm answering my own question now. I still think that action is important, but it will not, because of what you said, universe will give it when you're ready. It will not happen until your mind is there in the right place. But if you're just working on your mind and you're not doing anything, of course, you'll just sit in. You'll be just sitting and telling yourself you're abundant when truly all you have is you survive.
That's it. And that's where the ego comes in. And that eternal optimist saying, yes, I am enough. I am good enough. And yes, we are all good enough, but we have to work at being good. My mentor, he says, would you rather look good or be good? And it's like, oh, we're both. But it's a constant reminder that we don't have it figured out, that there are steps that we need to take. You can get stuck in your mind, though. You can get stuck in those thoughts, in those thought forms. And sometimes doing things, actually setting goals and writing a certain amount of articles or calling up a person and following up on an opportunity is the most highly effective thing that you can do to move that needle towards your desired outcome.
Cool. Thank you. I really like that you're not fluffy. I mean, you make it simple, but you're not fluffy. No, sorry, I've been in this field long enough. You know, Sarah, I wanted to ask something. Let me, if I can remember, because I'm on holiday mode. I don't always remember hard questions. I don't remember. Never mind.
It'll come to you if it's meant to.
Yes. I suddenly remember. So basically, my question was this. We live in this interesting paradigm that you sometimes have to sacrifice something for the sake of achieving somewhere else. Like there were those famous sayings like, oh, you want to be successful in your career, you have to choose what you give up, you know, like health, family, or whatever. I want to ask you this. What is your experience saying? Because you've been in this field, you've worked with people, you've seen their stories. Don't you think that it's the other way around? When you unlock a new level in one area of your life, be it emotional or career or health, somehow because the truths are universal. And you can apply the same rules which you apply for money. You can apply them in your health, in your love life. And somehow you unlock a new level in finances, and your emotional life starts thriving, or your relationship suddenly, because it's the same truth that has been unlocked. I don't know. What's your experience?
I think that speaks to the illusion of balance, and that there is really no such thing as living a balanced life, because something must not have the same level of attention in order for something else to grow. However, it's how you frame it and the perspective. So somebody could say to me that because I have a nanny for 50 hours a week and I'm not with my 2 youngest children, that I'm sacrificing their youngest years and not being a present mother. They could say that. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of judgment out there. And I've been a parent now for 18 years. I have 4 children. And I am present with them as much as I possibly can be. But I don't want them for a second to think that I'm not trading out that time to do something important in the world. Because to me, I love my work. I love what I get to do. I love empowering other people to see infinite possibilities. And for me, that's much more worth my time than spending that time with my girls, because I do carve out time in my day to be with them. And the time that I'm there with them is much more present than I would be if I had to be with them all the time. So I had to get really real with myself. And I've seen this happen time and time again, especially with mothers that have that guilt, like, oh, I don't want to follow my dreams because I'm still raising children. Or I don't want to follow my dreams because, you know, my husband, I don't know, won't know what to make for dinner or whatever it is. We make excuses when really we have to be our own sovereign beings. More than anything else, we have to follow that as our North Star, to do what makes us happy, to know that we're making an impact in the world, and to ultimately know that sacrifice is going to happen, but it depends how you perceive it. Some sacrifice is great.
But then the question is, how much of a sacrifice is it? Because I will absolutely support you on that. When I had my first child 12 years ago and I was thinking of getting a nanny, it was not an easy decision, because I don't come from the background where we were raised like that. But now, 12 years later, and I have to admit, I don't do anything at home. I don't clean, I don't cook, I don't do nannying. And I don't do that for one reason. We say that time is the only resource we can't buy, but truly we can. If we give up the little things that we don't really enjoy doing. So for me, it was super simple. I thought, like when I experienced that, you can't see it in advance, but when I experienced that, I realized that, yes, I might be spending some time away from my child, but if I was with my child, I'd be being sleep deprived, probably trying to take care of some household, changing the nappies, doing the things which stress me out, and not truly with my child. My body is there.
Yes. Yes. And I
but my heart
that
and
for
my
so
mind
years. Yes.
is somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I'd rather allow someone else do that for money. And when I come to my child, I'm fully there.
Yeah.
It's me. It's not an illusion of me. It's not my ghost. It's not my body. It's my heart. It's my soul. It's my time. It's everything. Yes. So it's not a compromise in my eyes. But then again, we might be weird with you.
I know, it just might be us. Nobody else in the entire world. I think so many people can relate to this, and a lot of women don't give themselves enough permission to follow their dreams and to even try it out, to make temporary decisions and to give it a trial period. Say, okay, well, I would never have a nanny, but what if you tried one for a week and you really loved it? You know, and that's how I started, because I thought, I mean, even 5 years ago, I never thought that I would have a nanny. No way, no how. And now I couldn't see not having that help. I cleaned houses for so many years. I cleaned my own house, and now I couldn't do that because it's not a fair trade for my time and the impact that it could have on somebody else's life. So really tune into it. Not everybody's going to be in that position. I mean, I still have to cook dinner sometimes and do those kind of things and fold laundry, buy toilet paper. But I love to do it, and it's being of service, and it's not beneath me to do that if I had to do it. If I had to clean the toilets in this house, I would be all over that if I had to, because somebody's got to do it. But I don't have to.
It's interesting because it's really an interesting phenomenon, because yes, you choose not to, but if you had to, you would. And I think this is the perfect attitude. Unfortunately we don't have much time. Because I want to make a little bit of closing. First of all, those who joined us, thank you. I'm still playing around with the time. I've never done this honest talks at this time, mostly because I usually sleep back in Malaysia at this time. So I never know how it's going to work out. So thanks for joining. Those who joined from my account, please check out Sarah. She's somewhere up there. I never remember where it is. But I'll share this. I'll share the video eventually when it's edited and everything. So follow Sarah. If you came from Sarah, you're welcome to get to know me.
And same, if you're following me, please follow Kristina.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you. So we've talked about everything.
Yes.
You know, we women always cover everything.
We do.
By the way, do you know you're my first woman in this Honest Conversations?
Oh, I'm so honored. Thank you. Thank you.
So what would be something you would like our people to leave this this little conversation with? Like, I don't know, maybe you can give us a little task or a little mantra or whatever, because you always share G universe, and I read it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It doesn't have to be this. It can be something else.
Okay, here's your homework. Do something that brings you joy within the next 24 hours. Something that lights you up from the inside, whether it's listening to your favorite song or calling your favorite person and having a really good, deep and meaningful chat. Seek joy and watch what manifests in your life. That's your homework.